Testing 1 2, testing 1 2. Testing 1 2, testing 1 2. All righty. Thank you guys for showing up. I'm your host, Supreme Decisions. Don't forget we have Super Chat, as well as don't forget we also have sponsors for the show. Not this one, but we do have one that's coming up, as well as don't forget the donation links are in the description. And if you're looking for a consultation, hit the consultation link and sign up for your 30-minute session so we can make sure you have a case and we're ready to move forward. Also, if you have some other things, my contact email is in the description. So, today, I probably got something new for some of you. I've got some information for others. Now, what I'm going to do is explain what the Graham factors are. Because a lot of times we look at cases, and for me, because I've studied different departments and the qualifications of excessive force, I look at police officers' interactions and their quick escalations, and I come to a conclusion that they were either poorly trained or they're trained attack dogs, which whenever I refer to them as that, I do have a lot of police officers that follow my channel, which is amazing to me. I understand why they do it, because there are a lot out there that are curious. They're just too afraid to ask, because crossing the blue line is what it would be considered if you're asking for legal help outside of the blue line, although that same blue line will leave you out to dry if you decide to not follow along and protect your brother, when in fact it's the poor behavior is what's putting your brother in danger. Now, going through that is understanding the Graham factors, where that comes from, how it's set up, and the constitutional framework for excessive force cases. Now, what I'm also going to do is show you a form of a legal plan against both the officer and the department. Because one of the things that I talk about often is I've been tying that in more and more lately, simply because most people don't think they have that option. They just accept what police officers say or other attorneys say because they won't take the case. Because again, I constantly tell you, piranha don't eat piranha. And then when you're going up against this machine, you have to understand what it is that you're supposed to do. Because any misstep can get your case thrown out because the machine is working how it's supposed to. So what are the Graham factors, which is i.e. the excessive force standard? Now, in the United States Supreme Court, Graham versus Connor, 490 U.S. 386, it's a 1989 case. It established the constitutional test for determining whether a police officer's use of force violated the Fourth Amendment, which is basically the unreasonable seizures. The court made clear force must be objectively reasonable under the circumstances, judged from the perspective of a reasonable officer on the scene. Now, keep that in mind, because you remember I talked about the reasonable officer standard yesterday, or in let's call it a past video. And when I gave you that context, what happened is most officers believe that what they're doing is okay, because again, they're cogs in the machine. Now, give you a great example. There was a young man. He was in Louisiana. He ended up, I want to say he hit he kicked a handcuffed suspect in Louisiana. Prior to him being fully investigated, he transferred to Alaska. Well, last month in Alaska, because he just quit his job a couple days ago, last month in Alaska, he came out to a call. Wasn't even his call. He's on probation. He goes out there and he goes to assist a second officer or another officer. Not he's the second officer. So when he gets there, he breaks up a little scene, tells the bystander, which is the young lady's husband who's being arrested. The young lady was being arrested, not the husband. The husband was being told, go ahead and leave while we're taking care of her. Well, the verbiage he used was, he walked towards me aggressively. Now, when you see the body camera footage, he didn't walk towards him aggressively. He walked towards him with an attitude. And then he stopped. He was he was about as nonchalant as you could be with an attitude. Because he stopped literally 6 to 8 feet away from him and asked him a question. Now, was the question that he asked aggressive? Absolutely. He's upset. You don't ever see police when it's a good time. You know what I'm saying? Other than when Shaq showed up to play basketball with those kids, you don't see police start smiling. Everybody's not Officer Norman. But, so whenever you get there, the anxiety is high, the tensions are high. Well, this officer decided that he didn't want to answer questions, which he violated his oath because he's supposed to be amenable to the public at all times. Not only is it in the United States Constitution, it's in every state constitution under the governmental section, which is why they have to sign that oath. But again, I'll get into that later because a lot of people want to argue with me about that. But I don't care. Because once you show me that what I'm saying is wrong, I'm going to show you that it's right. Oh, because most of the time, that's what I'm doing anyway. However, let's go on. So this young man decides that he's going to grab this man because he doesn't want to answer questions, and suplex him. Immediately, when the man's head hit the concrete, he goes to talking trash. Every other officer on the scene, one of the officers can be heard on the body camera going, ooh. And he goes, I didn't know his head hit the ground. When you can clearly hear it thud against the cement. The man had to have emergency surgery, not in Alaska. He had to be carted to 3 different hospitals to be saved. Just let that sink in. He didn't think the force was excessive. Now, would a reasonable officer believe suplexing someone onto the concrete was a reasonable thing to do for someone who was talking? Don't worry, I'll let you have that sink in. But even in those contexts, because there was another video. One, I put up 2 bad officers. I believe his name was Barler here in Texas, and there was another one in Chicago. He told the dude, go ahead and run so I can shoot you. That's not professional. The man who said they had 27 use of force cases against him. You look at another one down in Florida. He's arrested. He was called out for a wellness check. The lady says, I don't want to talk to y'all. I'm good. They insist on talking to this woman, knowing she's walked out, she's answered their questions, she's coherent, she's not in a mood to be bothered, and she wants to go in her house. Oh, you're getting arrested because you don't want to talk to us. That is literally what this man said. And here's the crazier part. They showed showed what happened from someone else's body camera. And you could see on this officer's face where he snatches this woman who he's checking to make sure she's doing good. He snatches her arm and breaks it. You could see it in his face because he knew he had broken her arm, and then he had an attitude with her because she was screaming. Would a reasonable officer think that was excessive? Keep that in mind. Now, the three core factors are severity of the crime at issue. I named those because those are the crimes where the most excessive force happens. When you have someone that is smaller, that is weaker, and that the officer feels they have an upper hand on. And if it's someone that's bigger that can fight back, it will be multiple officers. That is one of the issues that I had early because, again, I spoke about the Red Dogs. A lot of times, or tennis shoe boys, or the jump out boys. Now, keep in mind, all of these are police task force. The jump out boys, they were police task force. Tennis shoe boys, those were police task force. The Red Dogs, if you watch BMF, they showed you what they were. So a lot of the stories that if you heard me say them before, and then you watch BMF, be like, okay, that's really happening in Atlanta. Yes. And it's still going on in Atlanta. Just want you to understand that. Because even if you watch the Kevin Hart movie, the series, I can't even remember what it is, but it was supposed to be taken back in, what was that? The 80s? That's Pittsburgh. They didn't change anything over there. That's how it looks. They actually just went over there and started filming. They didn't do anything because that's how the area over there looks. Now, again, I'm getting off a little bit. But understand, these are the things that are done. So when you're talking about minor issues like traffic infraction, disorderly conduct, a wellness check justifies less force than those serious felonies like armed robbery or violent assault. Now, when you're talking about this, if you're arrested for something trivial, force quickly becomes excessive. That's why you talk about, when you're talking about a traffic infraction, why are you asking them out the car? Why are you throwing them on the hood? Why are you, again, all of these other things. Now, I'm going to tell you this. That is a routine thing in Atlanta. Because even whenever I first got here to El Paso, one of the things I talked about was, and people thought I was crazy, because I was like, a regular traffic stop in Atlanta. And anybody that's in Atlanta, Decatur, what is that? You got the College Park, because you got to say it that way. Off on Old National and Godby Road, when me and Ludacris was down there, when he was Chris Lover. But you got College Park, East Point, Fulton County. You have Glenwood and Forest Park have police. Gwinnett County, all of these, a regular stop, you're getting out the car. At one point, all of them, if you're my size, you're going face down on I-20. That was a normal traffic stop to me. Get out the car, put your hands behind your back. One time, here's the crazy, I'm going to give you a quick story before I go back to this. One time, I was moving because my house was robbed. I lived off of, I went Tara Boulevard. If you're from Atlanta, you understand what I just said. I lived in Riverdale. I lived off Tara Boulevard. My house was robbed. I then moved that day because I called the police, right? Because after my house was robbed, I had to get a report to get to my insurance company. So I had to call these bastards. Now, while the police was there, the apartment directly in front of me was being robbed, and he sat there, did nothing. I told him, man, just give me the report so I can leave. Now, I then start moving. Did not know they had an ordinance about moving at night in Atlanta. I didn't care anyway because I was going to do it. So doing my first load, I moved to DeKalb County. I moved off Memorial Drive. Now again, I'm saying these things so you can know, anyone in Atlanta know where I'm going. Now, I was over there on the backside of the college. I don't even know the name of it now because at one point they changed it to Perimeter. It's not Perimeter. I forgot the name of it. Anyway, I moved over to that area. I get stopped by a police officer. He takes my license. So, still moving. Take everything, drop it off, go back, grab more stuff, come back, pulls me over again. Same cop, same car. Where's your license? Like, dude, you just took it like an hour ago. He writes me another ticket for not having a license. Not because I was speeding. He wrote me a ticket for not having a license. So I'm like, whatever, because we're still moving. So I leave, come back a third time. This time I'm not behind the wheel. He pulls us over, same cop, DeKalb County. Never gonna forget this dude. He comes over to the passenger side. She has her driver's license and the insurance for the car and everything hanging out the window. Her whole window is down. And he comes to my side. The craziest part about this is the fact that he comes to my side and he goes, where's your license? I'm sick because, again, it's the same cop 3 times in a row. I told him, check your pockets. This bastard did not wait for me to get out the seatbelt. He reached in and pulled me through the window of the car. Do you hear? I'm 6'4", and at the time I was 240 pounds. He snatched me through the window of the car, and I was still in the seatbelt. So now he's wrestling with me. He's wrestling with the seatbelt. And by the time his partner gets me out of the seatbelt, they are hip tossing me onto I-20. Or excuse me, 285. They are hip tossing me onto the concrete. I think that's a little excessive. Now, I got my get back later on him, but I'm just giving you ideas and what it is that happens, because a lot of these, they will escalate for no reason because it becomes an ego thing. And because of my size, I know if they go to escalate, it's not going to be one cop. I've been known that. And anytime it was one cop, there was a problem. So what's going to happen is I'm going to go ahead and go, and then I'm going to beat you in court. And then I'm going to tap them pockets. Because at the end of the day, the whole point of this is to make sure you leave me alone. I'm not going to bother you if you don't bother me. I'm not going to come and introduce myself to you. Ain't no need you to introduce yourself to me. Because if we don't have anything that we need to talk about, our paths should never cross. And if they do, I look at it as God's will. That's God telling me to go ahead and tap them pockets. He's telling me he got money for me. That's the way I look at it. Because I have one thing. Leave me alone and let me do what I do and keep this thing going. Now, whether the suspect poses an immediate threat to the safety of the officers or others. These, again, is part of the conversation that we had yesterday. Because this, in the Graham factor, is a complete factor. It's an important factor. Now, if there was no weapon, hold on, let me put it there. There was no weapon, no aggression, or let me slow down. There was no weapon, no aggressive movement, no immediate danger, then force beyond minimal restraint is unreasonable. I'm going to say that one more time. No weapon, no aggressive movement, and no immediate danger. The weapon is the deciding factor of the immediate danger. Now, I'm not a danger to anybody because I'm fat. I'm not running anywhere. So I'm only a danger to whoever's standing in front of me. And if you're standing in front of me being aggressive, in Georgia, understand this, in Georgia, technically everywhere, but it's actually codified and reinforced by Supreme Court in Georgia, and I think it was 2022. I'll get that to you in a little bit. But you are required to resist an unlawful arrest with equal and opposite force. So if the officer hits you with a baton, you can hit the officer with a baton. If the officer pulls out a gun, it is chitty chitty bang bang time. Now, not recommended because it is then left up to them to give you any evidence that would go ahead and coincide with any of this BS. But understand, you are allowed to resist an unlawful arrest. Because if you have no weapon and you're not moving aggressively and you are not in immediate danger, there is no reason for anything to escalate and go beyond minimal restraints. Because remember, I told you, putting you in handcuffs, putting you in the back of the car, talking about you're detained, you are now being subjected to felonious conditions, which is illegal if you are absent a crime. Always understand that, because these are the things that they don't want you to know and they don't want you to fight back on, because they are liable for them, because it is clearly established. I'm gonna give you these ideals and how they are clearly established as we go along, because just like I told you years ago, we're at, I'm gonna say, 800 and some change right now in videos. I told you when I did the radio interview, there's going to be more than 1,000 videos. They're coming. And even I'm going to do, actually tomorrow I'm doing a members only live too. So if you're not a member, go ahead and get on that so we can go ahead and keep rolling, because that's going to be more in-depth teaching. So anyway, whether the suspect is actively resisting arrest or attempting to evade arrest, because again, these would go into exigent circumstances. Passive non-compliance. A verbal protest going limp does not justify high levels of force. So if I'm talking shit to you, that does not require hip tossing me to the concrete. That is excessive. If you're trying to snatch somebody up and they just, that does not require a high level of force. That is excessive. Now, if you're fleeing or violently resisting, throwing hands, and it's a lawful arrest, escalation to tasers, chokeholds, baton strikes, or firearm discharge is unconstitutional. So if you're not fleeing, because again, if your back is to the officer, you are not an imminent threat unless you have a weapon in your hand, which is why you always hear them say when they shoot somebody in the back, oh, he had a weapon, but then magically they can never find this magical weapon that this person had when they shot him in the back. Just like, I'm gonna give you one, just like the young man. The young man's father went out, which I don't condone. I understand the context. I don't condone what he did because of who and how he did it. Now, he went out, the cops shot his son in the back. The first thing they said in the news was this young man had a gun. In the report, there was a mention of a gun. In evidence, there was no gun. Now, so whenever the man sees the video, he does not take it out on the cop who shot his son, because it was just one cop who shot his son in the back. One. There's 5 cops there, 1 shot. Now, here's where I always ask the question. If it was such a danger, and if a reasonable cop would have believed that was imminent, why was he the only one shooting? Always ask that question. Now, to go out and not take it out on the person who did the action, and to just go and take the life of some random person, that should be punished. Because to me, if you have an issue with that person, you address it with that person. Now, I'm going to give you one too, because one of my favorite peoples is, and I mean the way I just said, one of my favorite peoples is Gilbert Arenas, because Gilbert Arenas stood on business. He was asked in an interview, it was just a random interview, and they asked, because at the time he was living in Florida, and it was right after the Trayvon Martin issue. He stated, I don't even know, because it wasn't about anything. It wasn't even about Florida. The interviewer asked Gilbert Arenas, if you saw George Zimmerman, what would you do? He said, if I ever saw him out, we're going to have a problem. We're going to address it. Now, that's all he said. It wasn't like, oh, I'm going to do it. If I see him, I'm going to address the issue I have with him. That's what Gilbert Arenas said. Now, fast forward 8 months. Gilbert Arenas is picking up some food. He sees George Zimmerman. Now, the most beautiful thing about this, Gilbert says, hold the food for just a second. He goes to the car. He puts that thing up. Puts it in the car. He immediately goes back into the restaurant, puts hands on George Zimmerman. Bop, 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 bop. Police come. Gilbert's not arrested. He is detained. He's not arrested. They allowed him to leave. Now, I do believe there was some type of litigation because Gilbert has yet to speak on this. So I'm pretty sure he had to come off a couple of dollars because of that. And I'm pretty sure he wished he had got in a couple more licks for the amount of money he spent. I don't care if it was $20. I'm pretty sure he won a couple more licks for that $20. But understand, he stood on, he had a problem with George. He saw George. He handled it with George. He didn't just go handle it with some random person. That's what would make it something else. And that's one thing that I'm talking about. So always keep that in mind. So it's just a note for awareness and fucking human decency. Anyway, the court has also emphasized that reasonableness must be evaluated in the light of the totality of circumstances, not 20/20 hindsight. However, this works both ways. It means an officer cannot inflate fear or exaggerate a threat after the fact. Remember, we talked about stock language. So when we're talking about stock language, we're talking about how I'm going to give you the greatest one. Whenever an officer shoots someone, this person's criminal history comes up and how they were beating on somebody when they were in the 8th grade. An officer is attacked or is in a scuffle. They use words like the officer was attacked, the officer was assassinated, the officers were ambushed. Because remember, we talked about Christopher Donner. Christopher Donner, up until the time he was an LAPD deputy, he was exemplary. He was an exemplary student. He was exemplary in the Army. He then goes to become an LAPD officer, and all of a sudden he's subpar. I think that's the word. But then I spoke about his sergeant, Teresa Evans, which most of you never heard her name before. Even in the documentary, they don't mention her name. They talked about how they were so afraid of him because of his training, because he used the exact same tactics against them that they use against us. But they were afraid of him. Just like when I love to hear when these officers go, well, you're taking down our license plates. Well, I have to run them through the police database. So that means, oh, you're not afraid of me. You're afraid of cops. So if cops are afraid of cops and cops think everybody's out to hurt them, then yeah, I'm going to let you finish that one because, again, I spoke about them using stock language and them being afraid of everything. And they will conflate or inflate fear. They will exaggerate a threat because it'll support their inflated fear. Because I could keep saying the word, but it means nothing. I am talking now about holding them accountable because of that fear. Because if we have cowards in uniform, they don't need to be there because that uniform is for people that are brave. I'll say that one more time. That uniform is not meant for cowards. It's meant for those that are brave. And if you are afraid of everything and everybody's out to hurt you, you need to go get a new job. Because I love it when people say, oh, well, police have dangerous jobs. Absolutely. They make it dangerous now. But here's the great part about it. They're not even in the top 30 dangerous jobs. I'm supposed to, you got to understand. Cool. Do I need to understand about my lawn, the dude that's working the lawn, that's cutting down trees? Because that's number one. What about the dude that's washing windows on the skyscraper? Pilots, Uber drivers, door dashers, Lyft drivers. They have more dangerous jobs. Pizza delivery. They have more dangerous jobs than being a police officer. But do I have to understand that too? They'll be like, oh, Richard, you're just exaggerating. No. Being a police officer isn't in the top 30 for dangerous jobs. Being a clerk at 7-Eleven is, especially at 1 a.m., you are a target. Why do you think stores close at a certain time in certain areas? Because I'm going to give you an example. Walmart on my side of town closes at 11:30. Walmart down in Lower Valley, literally 4 miles away, they close at 9. On the other side of the mountain, they close at 12. Why? Because the neighborhood is different. There's a different threat level in these areas. Walmart understands those threat levels. So we have to understand and recognize, one, we're either being creating cowards or we're creating killers. And if they're going to be a coward, you go ahead and take their uniform. You tap those pockets. Take that certification. Make sure you take everything they believe they love. Because that uniform is not meant for cowards. You know what? My bad. Because that got a little personal. Because that pisses me off. Because I hate hearing and seeing that. Anyway. The legal plan that's going to target the officer. And I mean that the way I just said that. And pun intended. You're going to use a 1983 claim alleging Fourth Amendment rights violation. Is going to be under objective unreasonableness under Graham v. Connor. You're going to defeat qualified immunity by showing that clearly established law prohibits precise conducts. Cite cases in that same circuit with familiar force or similar force that was held excessive. Now, there are those people that love to go to state court, so I actually decided to put some in there. State court claims, state tort claims. You know what? Let me get some water because I'm doing too much right now. Thank you, Brian. And actually, no, I have not spoke about Barnes v. Felix. If you like, you can set up and be a sponsor for a show, and I can do that for you. And I also appreciate you, brother. I'm guessing because there's just a B, and Brian is generally a guy's name. Hopefully, not trying to offend you. Anyway, some people like to go to state court. Don't know why. But state tort claims against an officer. You can go battery and assault, intentional, harmful, or offensive contact without lawful justification. Now, I literally talked about that a couple hours ago. The unlawful, let's call it unlawful touching. Quit touching me. Get your hands off me. False arrest, false imprisonment. If no probable cause exists or arrest was tainted by excessive force, the false arrest can also be carried over to federal court because, again, in state court, I think it's to me like you going to talk to a child's sibling. I'd rather go to federal court. That way, the adults can speak. I talk to people's parents. I don't talk to anybody's kids. I don't play with my kids. I'm not playing with yours. So that's how I go ahead and negate all that. Now, negligence. Improper tactics poor judgments leading to unnecessary harm. This is the easy, because again, these same state torts that you're doing with that, while you have an opportunity to be successful, the likelihood, the percentages go way down. While in federal court, you have a much higher chance of getting what it is that you're looking for. Now, evidentiary strategy. Just like any other thing, you're going to obtain medical records and as much footage as you can, even if you're going to go to businesses. Because even one of the police officers that's being indicted now, he actually assaulted someone in front of a nightclub. He then, while he was off duty, he then went while he was on duty to get the video from the people who actually had it, did not realize that not only did they have it on their surveillance, a couple of the people at the store videotaped it on, or actually grabbed the phones out and started recording. So he got the video from the store. The other police officers that did the federal investigators got the ones off the phone. So it didn't matter that he went and got the evidence and thought he was destroying it. It just got him another charge. But you just obtain evidence, because it's not what you know, it's what you can show or what you can prove. Now, obtain use of force records. Again, these are things that are laid out in your package that what I spoke about with discovery and all of those other things like that, freedom of information, what you were going to do for an incident report. All of those things coexist together because you're going to need them for your lawsuit. Now, here's my favorite part. Depose the officer aggressively. Lock them into contradictions between reports, policy, and their actual conduct. This is where it's fun, for me anyway, because you get to see them squirm, and the great part is they cannot plead the fifth. They must answer. They can object all you like. They must answer. Because if they don't, they give up their shield. Not just the badge and gun, they give up their post certifications because it is a violation directly of their oath. Now, again, they're not going to tell you that. I'm pretty sure there's not anybody on YouTube that has told you that. There's nobody telling you these things. Why is that? Because here's the thing. I spoke about the intentions in my last video. The biggest issue with one's intentions is damn what they say, watch what they're doing. Watch their actions. Because when you're talking about what's going on and how someone is doing something, you have to pay attention how they're actually moving. So now we're going to talk about adding in, because again, I've talked about this to nauseam, targeting the police department or the municipality, which is also the state. Now, a Monell claim. Now, if you've been following me for any time, I literally did a video, I think it was like my 5th or 6th video 7 years ago, where I spoke about, I believe it was Monell v. Strickland. But they argue that excessive force stemmed from any official policy, practice, or custom. Here's the one that you're going to hear the most often when you're bringing into play, or you want to hear the department throw the officer under the bus. They're going to say there was a failure to train the officers on de-escalation, and then they're going to punish the officer. Because if they do not punish the officer, they are liable. If they do punish the officer, it's to cover their ass. But what happened to that blue wall? Yes, I paused for dramatic effect. Matter of fact, I'm going to use this time to get me something to drink. Because whenever you're doing this, you have to understand their tactics. Ratification of misconduct by supervisors. A pattern of tolerating excessive force complaints, i.e., the dude I put up from Chicago. He has 27. They're tolerating his excessive forces. Excessive forces. I'm pretty sure that's not proper. But anyway, they're tolerating it because he's there and he has 27. That is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my life. So again, here's the next factor to that. It's our fault he's still there because everybody he comes in contact with that he writes a citation for, that he's part of the arrest, they should be addressing and fighting back simply because he's there. Just like the dude in North Carolina. Just because he's there, you need to fight back because he is a bad cop. He is horrible. But if you don't, they're allowing this fool to continue. And I mean it the way I just said that. They're allowing the bad behavior. And here's the greatest part of that. They're proving what I said in my video 4 years ago to be correct. They're rewarding bad police officers. They spend $50 million almost a month to protect bad police officers. They spend a little over $7 million per year for police officer mental health. And if you believe in the energy, and I spoke about this before, and I actually had a couple cops actually shoot me an email and tell me how upset they were with me because they were like, you're not lying. They give you, the only time you can go see this mental health professional is during your shift. So you have to get permission during your shift, not to work your shift, to go get mental health when they won't allow you to do that. And then a lot of times they're booked up during that time. So if you're not ordered to go see the mental health professional, you're not allowed to go see it. And what happens with most police officers? The highest domestic violence, the highest self-offing, the highest. So now you have the most violent because of the IQ, but now you've made it to where these low IQ people don't have an outlet when they're picking up everywhere they go negative, 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 and they're not able to disperse it anywhere prior to going home. I want y'all to think about that. Because you want to go out here and date these single cops. They're going to bring all that negative home, and you're going to want to talk. You're going to want to spend time. They haven't even decompressed yet. They haven't gotten all that negative off of them yet. Which is why they don't do anything other than explode. Which is why I also gave the conversation of whenever I had my son touch the police officers. 2 of them shook my hand. They were smiling. They were great. Hey, appreciate you not wanting this child to be afraid of us because we might have to do something to him that's unnecessary. And the one cop that had an attitude, I don't shake hands. So yeah, go home and make a gun sandwich. Anyway, because if you're that upset doing your job, you shouldn't do it. Because even in the context of if you're angry all day, you shouldn't be a cop. I actually watched one today, and the dude said, if I can't handle someone cussing at me, I shouldn't be a police officer. And I was thinking to myself, oh my God, I should record that. I wish I'd recorded that. Like in the moment. Because when it's genuine, if I can't handle somebody cussing at me, I shouldn't even be a cop. Because you're not showing up when everything's great. You're showing up at bad times. You're bringing bad energy. You're keeping a bad circulation, and then most of you are behaving bad. And I mean bad meaning bad, not bad meaning good. But understand, I actually did let me go on because I'll sit here all night with that. But again, I also talked about Miss Ingram, whatever her name is, because she's got I think she's been married at least 3 or 4 times down there in Richmond County. Inman. Negligent hiring, where we talk about the police officers jumping from place to place to place. Negligent retention. Negligent supervision. If an officer has a prior history of complaints or use of force incidents, department failure to discipline or retain strengthens liability. 27. Inman. I know I have 3 right now. We have a video of 1, but there's 3 right now. 2 of those people have contacted me. Understand, she's a bad police officer. She is a horrible, and she was a great example of negligent retention. The greatest example, well, not the greatest because this idiot in Chicago, and I mean the way I just said that, he took the trophy. 27 use of force complaints, 21 other civilian complaints, and he had, I think, 4 or 5 lawsuits against him. He is a horrible person, and the Chicago Police Department that he works at should also be sued every time he is, because they are keeping him, and this is part of the grounds of that. Policy and culture attack. Argue the department systematically prioritizes aggression over de-escalation. I wish I could remember the name of the police department here in Texas, where Burrow was at, because he had an excessive force complaint at this police department where he actually pistol whipped someone who was in handcuffs on the ground, face down. And he was indicted for it. And he's still a police officer. And what did he do? He lied about kneeing this same dude, another dude, in the side for a traffic citation, which shouldn't have been a citation just because the car wasn't registered in Texas. So that means if I buy a car in Georgia, I register the car in Georgia, and I drive it here to Texas, that I'm going to get the hell beat out of me because the cop don't like that it's not registered in Texas? That's excessive. These are the things that I'm talking about. This is what I'm trying to get at here. I want you to understand there is an opportunity for you to be compensated for their fear. Let's call it that. Because if they want to be scared of everything, make them pay for it. Make their fear cost them. Now, here's the next one. The use of prior lawsuits, settlements, and Department of Justice reports as evidence of a broader unconstitutional pattern. I literally just talked about that in the previous video. Literally, hours ago, just talked about that. Understand, their history matters. Putting a police officer's character on trial matters. Getting evidence of, which is why whenever they try to destroy Brady evidence, that's why I'm putting it up. Because you got to have a place for it. You got to find it. And when you see it, don't allow it just to be thrown to the side. Now, here's the last step. Your remedies and leverages. So we can go to damages. We can get compensation for medical bills, lost wages, pain and suffering, punitive damage, and against the officer. You can also go to court order reforms and training, supervision, and reporting, because these are injunctive release. You can get a TRO? Temporary restraining order. You can actually, if the officer's conduct is bad enough, and a lot of times they will show you that. Now, just to give you an idea, I've done this 36 times, and one time, an officer escalated, and his actions allowed me to seize his bank account, his house, and something else, because that way and his cars, his vehicles. he could not transfer anything out of his name. Now, prior to the decision, you can't cash a check. Guess what? Your wife can't cash a check either. If you have children, if the police officer has children that's over the age of 18, they can't cash checks either. You put, and then you know what you do? You wait till the last day of the deadline to file anything. Because now they're very receptive when they don't have money. When they can't move around, guess what else she's also taking? How long you think that wife is gonna stay there when she can't get cash a check? How long you think your kids gonna be happy with you if they can't cash a check? They gotta go ask somebody, give me some cash app so I can go. They gotta go ask somebody for the cash app so they can go put gas in the car to go back and forth to work to a job they can't even get paid from. Because of dad. Hell, because of mom in some cases. But understand this. Now, here's the last part of it. Frame the case not as a split-second mistake, but as the predictable result of culture and impunity. The officer crossed the line not in chaos, but in the violation of clearly established constitutional limits. The department empowered them to do so. They ignored the complaints and now must be held accountable. The Graham factors are the sword and the shield. They measure the force, expose the officers' lies, and open the door to municipality liability. Thank you guys for watching. Don't forget, donations are also welcome, and Super Chat is always open. And if you need to have a conversation, my email is there as well as the link for counseling or consultation. So, love you guys. I will see you in the morning, a little later. Supreme, and I'm out.